Good morning, good evening, good
Well,
afternoon.
all of the above. Hello and welcome. How exciting it is to be here again. You know, the weeks just seem to fly like we must be spinning faster, I think. Well, what a topic we have today. And look, with all who are watching it either live or later on, share, because everything that we do here on this platform is all about bringing humanity to a higher state of consciousness and empowerment and self knowledge. So,
Mm.
isn't that a journey that we really all on? That we are learning to know thyself, and that's a great statement. But how do you go about that? And I guess that's what we're all about. We are sharing and exploring all the things that we have traveled along to know ourselves more, and that never stops. It's not a quick fix thing. It's not a destination. It's just when you know more of yourself, you just want to know more of yourself. Don't you think, Sovereign?
Oh, totally. Yes, the journey is an ever unfolding, mysterious web that gets to be navigated, and that seems to just as the Mendel broth just keeps expanding and keeps expanding, and yet the knowledge or wisdom or insight into life, into nature, into the human experience, it doesn't necessarily mean that once you get it, you put it to the side and then it's like, all right, what else is there? It builds as a foundational soul for us to base our navigation on and to have more richness in the experience that we can indeed have as human beings. And today is going to be an interesting dive into another topic that, as you said, we could be talking around for a very long time. It's one of those spirals inward that doesn't necessarily have an end, but it does have clarity.
It certainly does. And so this topic was really downloaded to me, as I said, about 10 days ago. And it was about this recognition of what thought is. And, um, and I guess for me, it is the recognition that there is nothing other than thought. And thought is the field of all potentiality. I mean, you and I are communicating through thought, and it is the awareness of that and then harnessing those thoughts to work for you instead of you being just, an end product of other people's thoughts. So, yes, let's dive in and look at the real creative process, and get a handle on it where we can, you talked a lot about a life living for you and through you and for you, and that is, I see that all the time. And so I thought, well, this just, is a beautiful segue into how does it do that, and
Hmm.
what what is behind creation, and of course it is thought. So I'm going to hand it to you because you wrote something really beautiful to me, and I thought, wow, I this is something Sovereign is really tuned into. So, what do you see as thought?
Thought is a living process, and of course, it's a word sound. And I think it's healthy to start with our limited connotation of language that imposes usually a framework of what a word means. And through the study of syntropy, I've been really pleased to find very common words such as management or there's a whole range of words that I've come across in my trainings that initially I had judgment on, management particularly being one of them. And what looking through the lens of syntropy has provided me is to actually see that these words didn't just come out of nowhere, but they have been stripped maybe or diluted from their intrinsic meaning. And that's what I feel is really beautiful to explore in all of language and in all nouns and all word sounds that we use, as to what is the meaning of that sound. Because when we look at that with open curiosity and with new eyes, we may find that the limited belief systems or the belief systems that we currently have around it are making it more challenging for us or disabling us to see a broader view. And so, how do we broaden our view? And it's just being willing to become curious, to explore what are thoughts? Where do thoughts come from? I have thoughts, others have thoughts. There are thoughts in our collective, and there is a stream of consciousness that we as individuals translate, that comes to us, that is available to us. But most of the thoughts occurring for humans are coming from within, and they are based on what still is performing a function with purpose. And so preoccupation in the thoughts can very often be a messaging agent from within of something that still wants to be resolved or transformed. And when we relate to thoughts from a place of them all performing a function with purpose, we can start becoming aligned and sensing that thoughts, as they emerge for us, as they occur for us, are allies on our journey, are informing us of the world around us, are continuously and only ever assisting us to provide us with awareness as to what we may benefit still looking at, or what we benefit for our navigation. And so thoughts occur on a very practical level when you look to the left and you look to the right to cross a road. And that awareness of, yes, the road is clear, allows you to navigate. And so thoughts are a phenomena that to us is totally natural. And where I have gone into is the origin point of thoughts, of this stream of consciousness that we would have access to. And what I discovered is that the greater expanse of perceptive awareness of life, the universe, and everything in the macro isn't always available to us when we're still dealing in the micro of ourselves with the grapplings of what happened to us in the past, or the challenges that we feel that we face, that we are asked to challenge within ourselves and overcome, so that more becomes available to us. And I've had the fortunate opportunity to sit with that realm of thought, and where the origin in its essence is tappable into. And when I say tappable, is I have a conduit of my being that is rendering a whole bunch of random thoughts based on all my beliefs and all my ideologies. And all, I call it my Fruppy land. It's a Fruppy land of all sorts of made up ideologies and rules about this is right, that is wrong. And that has all come about over time to quote unquote keep me safe and allow me to navigate fairly in a comfortable way, but also in a form that makes it so that I avoid the bigger crashes, so to speak, that I can avoid. And yet I found that the metaphysical crashes that I encountered were also magnetized into my field, because I was entertaining certain thoughts. I was being indulgent in certain thoughts. And so the practice that I have engaged in a lot is a practice of stillness that allows me to witness the thoughts and to question their function, to question their origin. And in the micro, I have created a lot of clearing and made use of a lot of the thoughts and the preoccupations and the disturbances and the judgments that have been coming up. And what has come through for me is an expansion of contemplative ability, which really means gaining access to different streams of thoughts because I have worked through the little hurdles that still wanted to become uncovered and unveiled. And to me, where I have found most of my joy is not necessarily working through that making use of the judgments parts, because most of the time there were unpleasant stories residing underneath that. But once I worked through that, a larger expansion became available to me to really listen also to the stream of consciousness coming from nature, the language of images, and the archetypal nature of humanity's relationship with the world around them is a language, and it translates itself into thoughts. And I've been training myself to create more room and more expansion for richer thoughts, more purified thoughts, and more expansive thoughts to come into my field. And of course, doing the homework within was relevant to create the space for that awareness now to be more part of my daily experience.
Wow. When I look at that topic, I hear my father had one standard phrase that drove us crazy, and it was mind over matter. Mind over matter. It's mind over matter. And he had a brilliant mind, I have to say. He didn't quite know how to then direct that into matter that gave him happiness. However, it was a great foundation for me to examine my mind. And when I talked about thought, and what I wrote was that what fascinates me about thought is that everything is a thought before it becomes form. Right? Even you and I, we were a thought before we became form. So whether it is, I'm holding a crystal, but I don't think that was probably the only thing that wasn't a thought in my hand, but it was a thought to come to me. So we take all that for granted. And what I've done through my exploration and my searching for the meaning of life, that wonderful seeking that we do, was that the quantum field of creation is actually a quantum field of thought. And it depends on us what thought we actually allow, as you said, to come through us as a conduit. And everything is a thought first. So therefore, these thoughts are available to us all. And how often do you think of something and then somebody else has thought of it too? And then you go, oh yes, and that at the moment that's going on everywhere, because everybody wants to start a new earth community, and everybody wants to create healing centers, and everyone. Why? Because the collective quantum field is taking us into a higher state of consciousness where we become conscious thinkers. What that means is that you talked about, we have thoughts that come from within us due to the experiences we have or have had, and the stories we run about that, and through our emotions, and that they create thoughts. But we can be driving, and how often does that happen? I'm driving, and all of a sudden, my thoughts, if I'm not actually containing my thinking and positioning them where I choose them to be. In other words, if I'm not focusing on the present or on my next intention, then the quantum field is so open that all of a sudden I will find myself running a story about something that has absolutely nothing to do with me. And then I go, whoa, what's that doing in there? And it just shows me that this pool of thought is available to us all the time. And this journey that we're on of becoming more conscious and more aware of knowing our potential as conscious thinkers is to rein in and to really, pardon the pun, but think about what we think about. We talk a lot about think before you speak. But every word we speak was a thought before we spoke it.
Mhm.
And when I look at that word thought, I go, okay, that is the seed of all that is, waiting to be connected to other thoughts to become. Now, that is a wonderful thing to become aware of, as far as I know, because I'm using it as often as I can consciously. But
Mhm.
it also has a downside. And the downside for us is why we are where we're at. And that is that whatever we hear, see, or do creates an impression, an impact on us that creates
Mhm.
then a feeling that creates thinking. So this is fuel. It is fuel either to create something expansive, or it is fuel for those who want to create something that is contracting. Fear thinking is fuel for those who want to contract. Love thinking is fuel for those who want to expand. And that's putting it really simply. But that
Mhm.
is how it works. And my passion is, because I'm incredibly practical, is how does it work and how can I work it better? And we are building something better. So if
Mhm.
we do not get a handle on inner standing, thought, and how it works within us, and how every thought we think is fueling that or that. Of course, there's a lot in the middle, and there's also a lot of, going from one to the other. But as long as most of the thought is going in the direction of expansion, we will upgrade and we will uplift into a higher state of consciousness. And the more we do that, the simpler it becomes, because ultimately we are habitual creatures. So the more that we learn to reach for the thoughts that are going to give us good feelings and are going to expand us and are going to bring us closer to our innate creative self,
Mhm.
the more that will fuel that. So
Yeah.
thought, yes, for me, it is the seed of creation, and it's also the fuel of creation.
So beautiful. Ah, one of the things that has really been relevant for me in the process of re-enabling my nature, and what that means is really coming to navigate again in a natural frequency. Natural frequencies in the thoughts, natural frequencies in my ways of showing up in the world. Am I casting a smile, or am I just having a dismissive look onto others? What am I emanating? And as I started observing the thoughts that were occurring for me, and based on my unconscious orientation, I was magnetizing all sorts of thoughts to come forward for me. And I started questioning whether these thoughts are natural to be having. Is it natural to judge somebody? Is it natural to think that I'm more than somebody else? Is it natural to shout at my children? Is it natural to feel compressed and avoiding some form of conversation with another human being based on story? And I realized that I was engaged in a lot of experience of thoughts occurring for me. I wasn't choosing them. It's not like I was consciously choosing to have thoughts that were about avoiding or that were about judging. I was just acting out. I was just existing, so to speak. And I became very curious how to become a master of this activity of thought, and how could I navigate the tumultuousness of all these thoughts in a form that would bring me not just to calmer waters, but to bring me to a greater sense of fulfillment and a greater sense of completion, a greater sense of freedom. And one of the things that I learned by observing thoughts is actually tuning into the feeling based world that I have, to feel into the frequency that the thoughts represent or emanate or hold, and whether those frequencies are actually natural. And so I started leaning in my natural ability to feel through the thoughts that were occurring for me. And as I was doing that, a lot of clarity came about, a lot of dissolving happened very quickly, because as I was bringing awareness to whether these thoughts actually feel nice, because that's really the essence of it. Does it feel nice or doesn't it feel nice? Is it a yay or is it a nay? It then also became a natural choice through a activation of my will and the willingness to have these thoughts. Because if these thoughts occur for me and I am the witness, and I get to curate whether I want to play in those thoughts or not, is it also available to me to bring other thoughts? And of course it is, because it is a choice. And the choice is tied into the human will and our willingness to choose a different frequency, to choose to get out of the unnatural frequencies of thoughts that are occurring for us, and then start questioning, what would that frequency of thought where I am suppressing the sovereignty of another, or where I'm looking down on another, what would the love filled, the natural frequency of that look like? And am I willing to start embodying and training myself and my cells into embodying those natural frequencies? And what started happening for me is, as I turned down the noise, so to speak, and was more closely present with it, I developed what I call a listening to the heart song. Because if we are not conscious navigators, if we are not consciously willing, because it is a choice, if we're not consciously willing to observe what is all going on in that upper chamber with all the rah, 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 and all the stories that we seemingly have no control over, it becomes apparent that no, first of all, we are response able. And if we have the ability to respond, it therefore also becomes a choice whether we want to further those frequencies and cultivate the outcomes associated to those frequencies of thoughts, or whether we want to cultivate something that is more harmonious and more in alignment with what we actually know is natural. And so as I turned down the noise more in order to be a closer listener to all of that activity, I became aware that there is underneath that unconscious navigation of thoughts, there is a conscious presence that I have come to learn and name my heart song. It's the deeper essence of being that also has thoughts producing, but it was fairly overruled, so to speak, by all the heavy noise of the matrix, of the system, of the programs of beliefs that I was operating on. And as I brought that noise down, simply by becoming willing to be more present and more conscious whether I want those thoughts to continue, or whether I want to cultivate thoughts that are more in resonance with love, companionship, compassion, co-creation, and inspiration. When that choice became self-apparent to me, it was very easy, of course, to say, well, I'm going to go with what feels nice and what feels nicer. And so I became a conscious cultivator of what I started calling my mind garden. I became consciously more present with what I was planting in there, what was coming into my mind garden from the outside world. And was I being a conscious gardener of all that thought material coming in? And as if I see myself as the gardener in this mind gardener, it is my choice to choose which thoughts I want to plant and which thoughts I want to see grow and bear fruit in my life and for others. And so the heart song became more prevalent in my being because I tapped into a more natural frequency that was underneath the noise. And with that, I started cultivating a mind garden that's predominantly focused on being in syntropy with life, being in syntropy with the flow of consciousness and the flow of language and words and thoughts that can come to me and open that door within myself. So I get more of that as opposed to staying in the pre programmed kind of. I see a little baby in one of those boxes being 3 years old, so 1 square meter, instead of staying in the box with bars of what the preconditioned mind has been trained and programmed with to operate from.
Just amazingly beautiful, and so much there. And for those of you who will be listening to this, play this again and then again and again, because the wisdom that is coming through these words is immense. As you were talking, you talking about stillness, and I love stillness. I just like to sit. So if I go into this moment of stillness right now and connect to my heart, and then ask my heart to bring up thoughts that are in resonance with its highest fulfillment, its highest consciousness. But how many of us do that? How many of us do that and stop? Even meditation for me is something that is taking me away from me, looking for something that I know is in me. So for me, the journey of meditation, of course, was like everyone else. It was the path to finding myself. Today, my path is more about instant conversation with the inner self, and this awareness of that within me, there is something that will produce the thoughts that I need. So thoughts come. You said, where's the origin of thought? For me, thought is what life is. Thought and life are the same. If we didn't have a thought, we wouldn't have any life, because we think life, or we think whatever we're looking at. If I'm looking at you, I'm thinking about you. If I'm looking at a sandwich, I'm thinking about the sandwich, right? So there is thought and life are the same thing. So if you look at it from that perspective, is what kind of a life do you choose to live? Now we're getting to the crux of creation. So then don't wait for life to come to you, as Sovereign says so often, but decide what kind of fuel are you going to give the process of life, thoughts that you are projecting onto it. Right. So for me, this stillness is really getting connected with the self and feeling. So when I feel right now, I just feel love. I feel love. So those of you who are listening and watching this, go within yourself this moment and just ask, what are my inner thoughts? Not what are the thoughts that are impacted on me from the news or from the latest YouTube or even from my morning post. Just go within yourself and feel and ask your heart and soul, what are the thoughts, the highest possible thoughts that come up for you now? For me, there's an instant smile on my face. There is a well of joy coming up. There is a crescendo of appreciation, of infinite love that lives within. There's nothing more expansive than this moment within myself. And in that moment, there is no doing, there just is me and my heart and soul. In this moment, we are living in a higher state of being, in a higher state of connection, in a higher state of expansion that gets constricted the moment we use our thought for things that are less than this moment. So I would love to encourage you to spend time with you because you're a thought. You are the number one thought. And yet, how little thought do you give to yourself? You are so precious. You are all that there is, all that you have. And when you come home to that thought and you give that fuel, joy, love, abundance, peace, harmony, all the things we talk about will be yours. Not from someone else giving it to you, but from you putting thought to it. So you wanted to journey today. We just did that. How did that feel?
This beautiful life and this beautiful heart center that has its own song, a heart song, a constant flow and emanation of love-filled, harmonious images and thoughts that rise up from that I can be in, that I can listen to, that I can sit with, and that has the language of my soul coming through for me. And one of the things that I have recognized as we all grew up in this westernized world with all of its programs and all of its need for security and stability, and foundationally our Western model is built on artificial lack and scarcity, which really roughs us up as younglings early on. And as we grow into the age where we are, I don't know, what we would call it, ripe to get a job, or ripe to start earning a living, all of these words that and sentences that are part and parcel of this scarcity culture that is a mindset culture. It's really roughed our our beingness up so that we ended up in the necessary overuse of the intelligence to stay safe, to not have that happen again. That didn't feel good, so how can I stay? And with that, we are gaining a lot of information from the outside world that doesn't necessarily, in the first instance, go through the filter of our heart. It goes through the filter of all of our stories, all of our trauma, the lenses of Western cult programming. And what that filter does, because it's a distorted filter, because there's so much distortion of everything that went wrong, everything that wasn't right, and everything that has still not been made amends for. All of those stories form the lenses, and they create a distorted way of relating with everything that is there for us to engage with. But the question there is to ask, is it a peaceful response? Am I in a peaceful place? Am I having all this information in, and am I in a master navigator presence where I can see it and I can feng shui and dance with it and be like, oh yeah, I see what you guys are doing? Or is it triggering my responses and my neurochemical associative reactions that then trigger also feelings and that make me then conjure up a whole range of thoughts? One of the art forms in, because it is a training that I have so committed myself to willfully, was to really love all those thoughts, all the ones that weren't feeling nice, all the ones that were projective, and just bringing love to them. Because as the projections turned out to just be stories from within of little parts of me that were still angry with so and so and this and that, as I was willing to not hold judgment over the thoughts that were causing judgment onto others, but instead I was radically willing to love myself and myself and my thoughts and the judgments that were occurring. A charge of its relevancy for it being heard started dissolving. The impetus for it needing to be so and for me needing to be right started to become less relevant, because the thoughts were only as radical and as reactive and as judgmental and as victimized as they were, because I, the sovereignty of self, hadn't yet comprehended that it is my role and responsibility to not just apprehend those thoughts, but to embrace those thoughts and say, hey, it's okay. So to bring the love that my soul is intrinsically wired for and from to express, to bring that heartfelt sense into the realm of my upper chamber thoughts, to allow the love of my heart that is a never ending wellspring of satisfaction and joy and a sense of so much goodness is in this world. As I bring that up, has the ability to wash clean all those filters and all those lenses that were still creating distortions of what I was really seeing. And as those lenses started dissolving, because I was actually not saying, oh, that lens needs to be getting rid of, that's not the right lens to look at reality through, I need to be loving and kind. I actually just loved the harsh thoughts. I loved those unnatural frequencies. And what happened is that they sometimes miraculously flipped to no longer be the story, but they became the essence of why those filters even came into place. And instantly I was bringing love to that. And what happened is that those reactions stopped performing a function with purpose. Bringing love to our preoccupation in the thoughts, to me, seems to be very relevant, because only love is our way home, home to self, home to wholeness, home to the language that wells up from our heart space, that gets to infuse all of us, that our soul is here on a greater mission, is here for a larger purpose than to be preoccupied with all the noise and all the stuff that others are doing or are not doing. And once I comprehended that and started to really allow my inner essence to have the remedy and bring the balm and bring the love to all of the crackly thoughts of judgment and pain and sorrow related narratives, I started feeling so much more able to also witness my thoughts. Because in the beginning, I was very much entangled in it. Oh, I'm going to have to bring love into this. This is really busy. How do I do this? Oh, okay, got to go in my heart, bring the love up. And it was a very kind of, it was practice and training. But as I grappled with that process, I learned that, oh, I'm still participating in the distortion. And me, the I, the sovereignty of self, I can will distance. I can will a sense of perspective. And I can will my curiosity into motion to question, do I want to keep doing this? And then even the thought says, no, I don't want to think like this. This is horrible. This is not a nice pattern to be. I'm a thought here and I'm just going around and around in circles, and it's been happening for 30 years. I would really like to be set free. And that's one of the functions that I discovered from all the cult programming and all the traumatization and all the distorted belief systems based on artificial lack and scarcity. It has provoked a whole bunch of neurological reactions. And when I am willing to love those back into wholeness, they want to stop. They don't want to actually be performing their function. They want to actually also come back into alignment, because all of our being is part of the greater purpose of what our soul came here to the earth for, what our soul came to express. And for as long as those thoughts are really rambling as a rattling can, they are making too much noise for that expression of grace and peacefulness and love and kindness, and also powerful manifestation of the natural order. They are kind of blocking that from being able to be brought into manifestation. So love is the answer in relationship to the rattling of thoughts. And freedom is the result, a homecoming, where our heart song can start playing more of its amazing melody and its amazing purpose that it has to gift us.
Oh, yes, so wonderful. And just so many things there that you brought up. Where, first of all, let's look at freedom.
Mm.
Keep asking others to give us freedom, but you know what we have? We have freedom over our thoughts. If we want to take that freedom, if we want to claim that freedom, if we want to even acknowledge that we have that freedom, we have the freedom to think loving thoughts or judgment thoughts or blaming thoughts. And that is what we haven't been conscious of. We have been these unconscious reactors rather than
Mm.
conscious responders.
Yeah.
And so today, really, I would like to bring that to people's attention and go, we don't need someone else to set us free. What we need to do is to learn. And my work's all about retraining the mind. And you talk about something that is so close to my heart and soul, and that is the embracing all the pain and the stories that have caused us pain. And you talk a lot about trauma. For me, we don't have time to do all that hard yakka that I did for 30 odd years and whatever, because I know that there is an easier way, and the simple
Mm.
way, not necessarily easier, but simple way, is to go within and embrace every part of your experience, every part of your emotions, your trauma, your feelings, not with judgment or any thought of whether it was good or bad, but with gratitude and appreciation for giving you opportunities each time to expand.
Mm.
And if you're
Mm.
sitting here, then you look back at your life and you go, I'm a survivor. Look at all these things. Yes, I got through them and I'm here. I'm here and I am waiting, and I'm still on my journey to expand and to become more consciously aware. And that is
Mm.
diffusing. It is this embracing and alchemizing and integrating every part of our life experiences, no matter how bad they were, no matter how good they were, and throw away these phrases of I've got to get over it or I dealt with that. Both of them are you're expecting it'll come and hit you right in the nose the next day, because they are not resolving anything. They are just being put on a shelf. Denial, no, I'm not looking at that. Well, don't look at it, love it. Embrace it, bring it home, and go, wow, look at all of these things. Because at the end of the day, they were certainly. functions with purpose, but also they were creating thoughts, and they were then creating your next experience and your next experience. And when you look at the journey, you go, wow. Now, what I know today is that if I'd known, that lovely thing, oh, if only I knew what I know now. Well, we didn't. Okay. So why blame ourselves for it? It's like, okay, it's like asking a 2 year old to be able to do what you do, right? I mean, you don't expect that. I don't expect that of my younger self, because this has been a journey of learning and expansion. So what do I do with that? I bring that home. I bring it to today, and I go, well, I know so much more now, so I can bring that home to love and go, wow, look what I've learned as a result of it. So this is really the journey, this embracing and this recognition that we have the power of thought, that everyone has, because we are thought. Life is thought. So now when somebody says that to you, what are you going to do with that? Right? What are you going to do with it now? Yeah, I have the power of thought. I have the power of thought. Well, what is a good idea is to become a conscious thinker. And it means that become an observer. Become an observer of when are you acting out like a robot. When I look outside, when I go outside and see the people that are just doing stuff because they were told, is that conscious thinking? Is that considering, is this for my highest good? Is this in alignment and in syntropy
Mm.
with life? And we talked about it, I think, last week. I think I went a little bit crazy about, anyone who asks you to curtail your breath is asking you to curtail your life. I worked in an operating room, right, in surgery for many years, and we wore masks. So I know what a mask is for and what it's not for. We wore masks so that we didn't spit into your wounds for your good, but not because we were frightened of passing on any diseases. So I look at that and I go, but you're doing that out of ignorance, not knowing. And so are we consciously looking at ourselves and saying, I am a conscious thinker. I am conscious and in alignment with my heart and soul. We are always asking, what's the meaning of life? Well, the meaning of life is expansion. The meaning of life is asking, why did I incarnate into this form in the first place? And why now, during one of the toughest times in in the experience of humanity? Although when I look back at my birth years and my parents, maybe not quite, but we're going through a pretty tough time. And so I look at that and I go, well, this is the contraction. So how am I fueling the contraction with my thoughts today? Am I giving it fear? Am I giving it power? Am I asking for whoever created it to fix it for me? What am I fueling it with?
Mm.
Or am I saying thank you for the constriction? Because I am a I'm a thought creator. I am thought itself, creating the expansion. And that's all that I breathe for, is to be the thought of expansion, the thought of love, the thought of caring, the thought of kindness, the thought of beauty, the thought of alignment, the thought of being nature, the thought of coming home. That is the power of thought. For me, it is that moment of connectivity of all of those thoughts that are creating my next moment.
Mm.
And therefore, today's discussion for me is all about bringing that awareness to the collective. We're not victims here. We're unconscious. We have been, and we've been impacted, and we continue to be impacted by other people's thought forms. But at the end of the day, the power is in here. It's in here.
Mm.
Become conscious thought producers. And then you'll see all of your life expand, because that is the foundation of creation for me and for all of life.
Mm.
It's a biggie.
So it is a biggie. Ah, well, I'd like everyone to just take a moment. We'll, I want you to imagine a beautiful trifecta of a spiral, three spirals spiraling away, and then imagining what the meaning or the language or the thoughts were behind creating this. What is the purposeful function of articulating a message through a spiral? This particular image is a pattern of creation, a pattern that repeats itself, never ends, but certainly isn't two-dimensional. So as you sit with this image, I just want to invite you to close your eyes and see the image in your inner vision, and consciously be willing to turn down the noise of the thoughts by just becoming willing and allowing yourselves and yourself that heart song of information to connect with this image, these beautiful three spirals. And there is an opportunity for communion through this image, this archetype, this form of information. And there may be a message for you that you are able to witness, experience, feel coming through your being. Where I want you to put your presence is to bring your consciousness into a little light bulb. You may feel that it's still residing in your head because you're listening. And then slowly allow that little light golden ball to drop down through your throat, onto your shoulders. It gravitates from the left to the right, and let it sink a little bit deeper and stay with that little ball of light and follow it as it moves itself into your heart. See what is around this little ball as you are in your heart. Can you hear the music? Can you hear images? Can you feel or sense an environment that is very different to where you came from in your head? As you see this little ball of light in the center of your chest, I want to invite you to follow this little ball of light as I'm asking it to travel into the sacred space of your heart. There is a tiny place in everyone's heart, which is the birthing place of and the wellspring place of all information, all image, all language, all thought, all heart thought, all soul thought. I want you to just Be open and be willing to receive whatever the image is. For some, it is a well. For others, it is a little tiny little puddle of beautiful crystalline water. I want you to look upon the service of this place, this inner sanctum place, this beautiful, simple, but wonderfully delicate location in the center of your being. And I want you to witness the little light bulb hovering just above the surface of this mirror-like substance. And I want you to just drop in very slowly into that mirror-like water film. And as you poke your head through the other side, I want you to open your inner vision and look at what you see. And just breathe. Now I want you to bring your awareness back into that little light bulb, and you move your face up slightly above that beautiful sanctuary within your being. Whatever there was to witness, and for a lot, it is pure darkness and infinite space. Whatever there was to witness is a realm of adventure that you could become a navigator in. If you come from love, if you come with reverence, and if we come with open curiosity and willingness. From what I have been shown, this is the birthing place of creation inside of the human heart, where we are part of all of creation. And we have the potential and the ability to navigate that reality deep inside the essence of our being and traveling into the vastness of that expanse that you got to look at. We're not going there today. And so I want you to bring this beautiful ball of light back out of that beautiful darkened chamber of this tiny space into your heart, into the larger cavern, the larger temple, the larger spaciousness of your heart. And as you bring your presence to seeing that light bulb inside of the center of your chest, just allow it to slowly move upward and through your throat and back into your mind. And as you're there, I want you to imagine that you bring all that peace and that grace back up into your mind song and into your garden, and consciously see yourself having a bucket of this beautiful, beautiful, delicate, pure, and pristine water. And however your mind comes up with it and likes to play with it, spray it out over your mind garden. Infuse your mind garden with that beautiful love and that beautiful light that is always there to be tapped into, that is always there as a resource to bring harmony to our mind garden when we get lost again. We always get to go down into our own well, into our own inner sanctum, and bring up that beautiful, pristine water that we can use to sprinkle our minds and tone down that noise a little bit, but doing it with love, so that more of what we want to see prosper through our thoughts and through our conscious orientations can actually come to take root and come to grow up and come to become an experiential reality for us during this life. I want to thank you for journeying with us today. We are neatly experimenting with both the spoken word and the language of images to see that there is more, to feel that there is access, and that there are ways and how to's that are diversified and imaginative and rich and potentially full of delightful fantasy that we get to play with if we are willing and if we're conscious that that is a choice. I'm so grateful to be here on these calls with you, Yvonne. So wonderful to share.
And the same goes for me, as you know. We are making magic together. So remember, go within where love lives. Thank you so much for being with us.